of our alumni, and Athenkosi is no exception. So just a short introduction to Athenkosi. He's a skilled program manager and an educational technology specialist with over 9 years of experience in learning and development, instructional design, and student success. Currently pursuing a PhD at the University of Pretoria, he focuses on developing innovative online teacher training solutions through Idandu, a platform that leverages AI to improve teaching practices. His work spans stakeholder engagement, digital learning tools, and data-driven educational strategies, with a commitment to enhancing educational outcomes in diverse environments, including rural and urban schools. Athenkosi's expertise reflects his dedication to accessible, high-quality education across South Africa. That sounds fantastic. We're so interested and keen to dive in. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Athenkosi to introduce himself to everybody and then to take us through his presentation, after which he and I will have some light-hearted Q&A. Thank you. Over to you, Athenkosi, and once again, welcome.
Hi, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Athenkosi Nzala. I am quite thankful for the intro, Ben, and it's good to be back to the family. Not really that I've left, but it's really good to just reconnect with the MRF family again. As mentioned, I'm a scholar from eons and eons and eons ago. But it's still quite fresh to have the memories since the early 2020s. It gives me such a pleasure to be able to present some aspects of my life, but I think more the aspects of my work and how things developed over time. And I look forward to having to share that and also engage. I believe there will be questions for later on. So I also look forward to engaging and having an engaging session. And I'm hoping that the way in which I've structured the presentation we will sort of like bring about the impact that is also intended. And please do feel free to interact, send questions via the chat and ask questions later on. Otherwise, thank you so much once again for the opportunity. I'm just going to share from my side. Can you just confirm if you're able to see from your side? So it's hearing from your side as well.
Perfect.
Great. Very happy to hear that. So as mentioned, today our focus is mainly going to be on exploring the power of EdTech in the classroom. What has been the vision and the purpose coming from my side is, as you can see here, this is an app that I had to develop during my PhD project. Where for some time I just got bored and I was like, you know what, let me actually add value to the PhD and make it something that can be remembered. And this is that contribution for me. And the story will also unravel in terms of what that particularly means. But it's very much tied into what the power of EdTech can be to transform the lives of teachers. But I think I also want to share a bit about where the heart of this project is. And I'm hoping that from sort of like engaging with the heart of the project, you're also going to understand what the future also means in terms of being in the space of education and in the space of technology as well. So in terms of an overview, what I'll be looking at is just to do a bit of a deep dive in terms of Idandu, look at some challenges in terms of rural education, and look at Idandu's unique solution, the role of educational technology, not only just in South Africa, but in Africa, and also expected outcomes as well we'll be looking at, and other various topics. But we'll also be reflecting a bit what it means to be a Mandela Rhodes Scholar, because I'm going to tell you guys right now, and I'm hoping even those who are going to be able to get the recording, they're going to understand that part of what this project really means, or rather where it comes from, where it's founded, it's having an understanding of what it means to be a Mandela Rhodes Scholar. And there are certain themes around being a scholar that empower us to reach for our potential, but also to be impactful leaders in our society. And I think in my experience, as part of having to really ask yourself critically, what does it mean to add meaningful and useful value in a community that you come from? And I hope that throughout this presentation, it's a theme able to see. So the video that I'm going to hear, can you just confirm if you are able to hear the sound for me? Great. The video that I'm going to share is going to share a sort of like the foundation of where most of these things come from, and then I'll speak on other things a bit later on. When the fires raged through Khayelitsha, people lost everything. Seeing the damage made me realize that a lot of people right now may be losing a lot of hope, and they might not be receiving any kind of help. My name is Athenkosi Nzala, and the immediate thought that I had was that students were plagued with schools that were under-resourced. And so now with the damage that the fire has caused, the young students need help now more than ever. The preparation for exams was very important. My solution then was to make sure that the traumatized students were supported. If our youth is equipped with knowledge and compassion, they can conquer anything. In times of disaster, the people of this country know how to put their differences aside, to come together, to make difficult journeys less painful. Great. The context around the video is going to be the story around why I centrally do everything that I do in my life. And it's going to center around being able to add meaningful and useful value in each and every environment that I find myself in. Now, in this particular picture, the reason why I added it is just to add a bit of context in terms of my background, my upbringing. So I am a child from a township that is called, the township is called Bisho. It's actually a town, but where we would go when we were younger, it's called Adelaide, or in Xhosa, it's Kobongaba. That's where we would go and gather as cousins. That's where you'd grow up herding cows when you were younger. Now, part of my, primary education was from there. And to get to school most times, especially when it's raining, we actually had to do this. And it happened that, yes, the lady seems to be at the back of this young gentleman. And I was a young kid at the back of my older cousin, who would, they would sort of like carry us on their back to make sure that we get to the school. It was important for us to get to the school. The school might not have had the best resources. The teachers might not have made it in the class, but there was something about us making it to school and spending the rest of our day in school. And we didn't even allow the river at that time to sort of like stop us from getting to that destination, which was school for us. Many other students turned back. Many other students were taken by the river. And those were kind of the situations that we had to grow under. It was sort of like something that resonated with me to a point where I was like, I want to grow up and be an engineer. I want to grow up and be an engineer to build schools where I come from, to build the roads where we don't have the roads because we didn't have, to build bathrooms, to build, a lot of things that I could see are not there for us as people. And so then I went on. I happened to be so good and being graced with, mathematics and the love for science. My grandmother decided to take me from when I was living with my dad, where I wasn't going to school at the time. And then she decided to house me with my sister. And then that's when my education journey began. And left grade 12, went to the University of Cape Town, registered as a civil engineer. Remember, the goal is there, the passion is there. I don't want any other person to cross that river because then I'll build them a bridge, right? And I want them to get to a school where the resources are just there. And then you get, the understanding of the true picture that, well, as much as you have this passion, it really doesn't depend on you alone. You have to work with other people. You have to depend on on government. You have to sort of like get experience as an engineer before you start having to do your own projects. So then whilst working, obviously after graduating, doing quite well in engineering, the university appreciates you with, accolades and awards to say you are the best student with the highest achievement in the final year design project. And then now a company comes and takes you and says, look, you are the top student in transport. Come, we want you to come and work for Martin and East. And then I start to begin my work. And 2 months in, I then have an accident at work. And that accident at work was on a Friday. And it asked me a very important question. And because I'm a praying person, I started to pray and ask, if I died today, would I have fulfilled what truly is my passion, or truly is the reason why I exist? And I got a very heavy sense that day that I am not, if I had died that day in that accident, I would not have been living my passion. I was just there to make money and to make sure that as I graduate in my family, there can be food on the table. And I resigned on a Sunday after that accident, and I went straight to register for a master's in education and educational technology, because then after that time, I managed then to get a sense that this is where I know if I die anytime, this is where I'm fulfilled in terms of my purpose and in terms of what I truly want to do. The video that you've seen is a video that culminated out of a decision to actually be there for students and have the presence of mind to see the news and be able to, out of the relationships we had with the schools that we were with, to then be able to help out the students. But that's the background story of where all of this emerges. And then now, after registering for an education master's, and then start to get into the education world where you get into corporate, you do some roles, until I was like, if I started an Africa Can Foundation when I was in 2015 to help disadvantaged schools in different communities in the townships in Cape Town, I can definitely also start a business. And that's when I started Limitless Online Learning Solutions. And Limitless Online Learning Solutions went on to consult for quite a lot of companies in Africa, but the biggest one being MIT through Get Smarter. We were helping them with educational technology solutions. And I managed to have the biggest breakthrough when I was working with MIT, having to have worked with them for 2.5 years, consulting with them, and managed to then have more other clients that were coming in and then be able to employ people through them being consultants in the company. And this continued with then having to say, okay, the master's is done now. What are we going to do? And that's when I went into PhD. But the PhD, I wanted it to be a bit different. I wanted to not only just delve within educational technology, but I also wanted to be in the computer science world as well. I wanted to build something. I wanted to make something as a solution that can be remembered within helping teachers to sort of like transition into online teaching. That was a main part of my PhD. Now, remember, this story is the video that you've previously seen now is about schools, is about students not being able to go to schools because there's a fire in Khayelitsha. Now you start to imagine, what if there's a fire in the entire, in the entire Western Cape province? The students can't go to school. How will we be able to carry on with the education? The very same education that I was trying with many others to get to school to get, even if it meant crossing rivers. So now the power of technology enables us to offer the value that is offered in brick and mortar schools. And now it can be offered online. And I want to create a solution to empower teachers to be able to do that. But not only just that, but also to find other ways to empower themselves by having to create extra revenue, by having the necessary skills to teach online. So this one picture here is when I graduated. This one I added because it was quite a tough decision to resign, because I knew that the work that I was doing and the degree that I got was not only just for me. Crossing that river was for my family. And so to say I'm resigning is sort of like becoming a hurdle on them, but I also knew that the vision and the purpose of me deciding to be in education is going to also be something that they can be able to benefit from as well. Now, looking at some of the challenges in rural education, I've highlighted two here. there's a lack of access and resources, and I think this is something that we sort of like are aware of. We refer to this in academia as a digital divide. There's a lack of access to internet, lack of access to computer resources. The second part of this is having to analyze a skills gap for digital education. Our teachers who stand in front of us in brick and mortar school, most of them don't have the necessary skills to teach online. They lack hands-on experience with online learning tools. Those are the two particular problems. So then Idandu looked at solving this problem. Idandu then became a PhD project that would use technology and create a platform that empowers teachers from brick and mortar schools to seamlessly transition to online teaching. But for them to seamlessly transition to online teaching, it meant that we needed to give them the necessary skills. But then before we give them the skills, we have to have an analysis of what are the skills that are lacking. So that's where this journey began. This, by the way, was supposed to be me having to write a PhD and just hand in some theoretical thing that I did after data collection, right? And some writing that would collect dust if it collect dust, or be used if it's used. So Idandu only really came in after 1.5 years of my PhD, where when I was re-looking at some of the things I've written in my objectives, I was like, no, man, there is something that we can actually do or rather build here. So then if I went into having to build something like this, what has been its unique value? What became its unique value? So you remember that we just came through COVID-19. Because I started my PhD in 2022, we've just come through COVID-19. So a lot of schools have been closed at the time of COVID-19, and a lot of institutions are starting to adopt online learning. So then you start to think about what the unique value can be, right? And so it becomes a personalized AI-driven support. So we could be able to use AI to support teachers within this very same platform, but also empower teachers for online teaching excellence. And the other part of it is then aligning Idandu with SDG 4 goals. And SDG speaks to the United Nations, the goals that they have for 2030, they desire to achieve. And part of that is quality education, so that we can contribute to improving the access to quality education. And that's part of the value that Idandu seeks to achieve, right? So then I go on into this journey, and it's just like any other journey I would be in, just like the morning of that Saturday when I woke up and involved most of the Western Cape to go and help Khayelitsha that was burning, to offer money, to offer resources. So I woke up one day and I was like, you know what? I can go and learn how to code. I can go and learn how to use Python, how to use Figma and create a design. And so this is the very beginning of how my Figma design looked like when I was making Idandu. And part of this, because it's a university project, so there's intellectual property that's involved. So I can't really show some aspects of what this product is about, or because the university is the one that's currently handling the actual product and it's within its legal processes and things like that. So the only limitations I have is because of IP to only show just some aspects of the journey of having to have gotten to where Idandu is at the moment. So this is part of the beginning journey. Going on Figma. I've never been on Figma before. I've never touched Python before, but what I wanted to do was just achieve something that I strongly believed would be a solution to teachers. It would help them have the skills, but it would also help us that if any other pandemic were to come, we were to be ready, because our education would also be online. And our students from any walk of life would be able to access it, and teachers would have the skills to carry out that teaching online. So this is some aspects of the design. I got approval to be able to share some of this as well, because this was just the beginning stages of the design process. But this is a journey that teachers will go through on the app as they were going transitioning, or rather onboarding into it. So this was just part of the design. And then in terms of looking at the African EdTech landscape, my intention was always to play the transformative role using educational technology. So platforms like Idandu definitely do play that kind of a role in terms of having to bridge the educational gaps. Remember, I identified that there's an educational gap that's there, right? And so Idandu is also there to fill in that gap. And that particular gap has been the lack of skills that teachers have in our brick and mortar schools, particularly in the rural and in the township environments. Right. And then also challenges in implementation. So as I'm not sure if you can imagine, but there's quite a gap that's there, particularly within the rurals and the townships, because of also that the internet hasn't yet fully penetrated within the rurals and the townships, such that the skills are still very much lacked in terms of what is needed for online teaching. And so most of the time, if you are to train teachers, you are to go there and literally have it as an in-person training, because you can't expect them to have access yet or be able to use the resources they need to be able to do the training online. This was now part of the data collection of my PhD as well, where I had to do data collection for teachers both in the Eastern Cape and in Gauteng, and with the help of people that were rallying for me to finish the PhD, I managed to get people who were helping on the ground, to get schools involved, to get teachers involved, and collect details that are necessary for me to do the data collection. This also meant having to onboard them into a technology that's AI powered so that they can go through the training and make sure that they are supported. So how does this solution, or how does this Idandu sort of like align with the UN SDGs, right? So the first one, as I mentioned, is quality education, improving the educational accessibility by equipping teachers with certain skills that are essential for teaching online. And then you're looking at SDG 9 as well, in terms of industry and innovation. So the emphasis there is on digital literacy and infrastructure, building projects that help to improve the economy of the country. And that speaks to the industry and innovation perspective of the United Nations. And then in terms of intellectual property, so you would have heard me speak about how the project is housed and handled and managed by the University of Pretoria, because when you get into a PhD, and I think this is where perhaps many other scholars can be, can sort of like receive awareness, right? Is that when you sign a contract of study, whether it's for master's, undergrad, or for postgrad, you are essentially signing away rights for the university to own whatever comes out or culminates out of that study. So it's not something that you own, it's something that the university owns, right? And many perspectives can be shared on this, but it's something that every student ought to be aware. So I hope that from this already, you are empowered and aware that we're in an age where you don't have to get into a postgrad and just do a thesis and then that's it. You are able to empower yourself with skill sets that sort of like leave something that is useful and meaningful in society, right? And you're able to empower yourself with skills and learn yourself those skills, or sort of like delegate that skill, that work to others to build something. But I hope that as scholars, as people, we don't just go into the workplace. We don't just go into academia and just sort of like become normal human beings, that we become human beings that add meaningful, useful value in whatever we do. And I think from that is, when I started my PhD, or way before my PhD, I've always been interested in problems. I just wanted more problems. Give me problems. Just give me any problem. And being able to see a problem from a different perspective before I even think about a solution was something that I treasured, and I still treasure to this day. So when you now learn technical skill sets like coding and stuff and understand how these things work, you then start being interested in problems and wanting more problems. You don't look at problems as something that is a burden. You look at problems as an opportunity. And I hope that's something that we can be able to get from this. Then the second part is, whenever you're in university, look out for IP protection, because whatever you sign on into as a contract, you are binding yourself into that, and you need to navigate that space quite well. And I'm happy to facilitate any questions in terms of my experience when it comes to that. But obviously, I said I had already started limitless online learning solutions before I got into a PhD. So the negotiations when you get into the table are a bit different, especially when you've created something that's like this, right? And then also there's collaborative opportunities that are there as well. So partnerships with NGOs, educational institutions and government bodies, just that you don't, whenever you're creating a solution, don't look within yourself only. You must be able to look at what others can be able to do in collaboration. And then in terms of, I just want to share shortly about the future vision for Idandu. So as I mentioned, it's under the Department of Technology Transfer at the University of Pretoria. And after having to have sort of like say, okay, this is my PhD I'm handing in, it's also the handing in of Idandu as well, so that the university can then decide what they ought to do with it. And then you go through the legal processes. But the long-term vision that I always had was that you'd be able to transform the lives of teachers, and that the university saw value in having to do something like that. And that's the long-term impact that I've always seen when it comes to building this, in that you walk hand in hand with having to build a project and then hand it over so that the university can then make good use of it. And especially when you've seen that there are other enterprises that they had taken that are similar to this, where they've had impact and sort of like drive, obviously the profits that are going to come out of it, but also the long-lasting impact that you'd want to see from such a project. So this is a long-term sort of like legacy that I've left within the university space, and still involved in terms of the legal processes of how sort of like handover looks like, especially with the coding and everything else. But the goal was always for the PhD to become something that is remembered. So reflections as a Mandela Rhodes Scholar, my research project and my mission, especially with Idandu being part of my research project, is deeply influenced by the Mandela Rhodes Foundation's values. And the values that we've always learned is one of reconciliation, education, and leadership. What does leadership look like? And how do we get people to a point where they are impacted in a useful and meaningful way? And how do we continually grow ourselves to continually represent the value that we want to be in society? And then these principles guide the platform focus of inclusivity and empowerment within African education systems. And you see this from, from our, previous scholars like Chido, who is building and running such a great initiative right now, Vambo AI, right? So it's how do these principles that are coming out of MRF that we've been engaging in, right? How do they then translate to us building useful and meaningful and empowering projects such as these ones? And so the other principle is embracing innovation and collaboration. And this is what you've always seen, whether you see us in a room doing an exercise, whether we are having conversations, how the MRF space always enabled us to see how we can collaborate better. But if you're ever going to think that you're going to achieve something alone, you're going to find yourself missing within the values of what MRF actually promotes. And so that's what I really wanted to reflect on in terms of my scholarship experience, but also in terms of my PhD project as well, #Idandu. But thank you so much. I hope, Ben, I didn't take more than the time that I was supposed to take, but that is it from my side, and I'll give over to you. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. That is so inspiring, Athenkosi. Really, I mean, I'm getting the goosebumps. I just, I think it's absolutely incredible what you've achieved in such a short amount of time. And yeah, I really, really am. Yeah, you're an inspiration. So thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for sharing some of your personal journey as well. All I can say is your family must be super proud of you. I'm sure. Okay, so over to a couple of questions. I mean, we have you did touch on some of these, but I'm just going to try and flesh out some of the questions just to get a little bit more context around a couple of areas. And in terms of understanding the vision and the purpose of EdTech and its place in education, particularly in rural Africa, Why would you say it's essential for rural teachers to have tools and support for transitioning to online learning, especially in the African context? I mean, there are so many, there's a lack of electricity, there's a lack of data, there's a lack of software, so I'm interested to hear a little bit from you about like the importance of the online learning component, because obviously there's a need for it. I mean, otherwise you wouldn't be, looking into this. So I'm keen to hear a bit about that.
Thank you so much for the question, Ben. I think the rural communities are quite important because I think from one aspect that I view is that there's a lot of potential that that is always going to be within the rural communities. Why? Because we've sort of like viewed them as communities that are sort of like receiving transition or receiving empowerment later on, and that the cities are the ones that sort of like get to have a taste of what it means to be empowered first, and then whatever is left, these guys that are coming from the rurals are the ones that are gonna getting that a bit later on.
Yeah.
This for me is quite fundamental because in order for us to have justice in all societies, in order for us to have what you refer to as equality, in order for us to experience what reconciliation means, it means experiencing empowerment at the same time. It also means that we need to sort of like find a way to balance that the experiences of the people that are in the city and the experiences of the people that are in the townships and the rurals are taken into consideration and they are balanced. Right now, they're not. And I think we can be able to see that from different views. And I think the reason why, for me, online education or online teaching does need to start right now within the rurals is because I've seen to great amounts that the way data penetration is happening, there's data that we can now be able to get from the rurals, from the townships, in terms of people's lived realities, but also in terms of accessing people from there, but also at the same time, that is enabled by the internet penetration. And so if people have access to internet, if people can be able to have the skills to access certain resources or access or sort of like do activities online, I definitely, from my perspective, want people to be able to learn online as well, because already people are doing so. But then for me, this is more the formalized learning or the formalized training of teachers in the rural context to actually be empowered to teach online, so that if the country one day decides, look, guys, we actually, all of us now have online schools. We want all the communities, whether it be from township or rural, to be empowered enough to join that movement.
Understood. So I think, yeah, from what I'm also hearing, what you're saying is that we need, as people in the education space, as in the donor community, in government, in the corporate world, there needs to be a more equality in terms of balance of distribution of services and access to services. So
Yeah.
it's okay. That's what I'm picking up from your comments. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Also, I think, not to cut you, Ben, but also the other perspective, obviously, is by empowering it's to the value of South Africa, to the empowerment of South Africa's economy, is that if we prioritize every society and every society is not marginalized in terms of accessing, let's say, online teaching or online learning, it then brings a benefit to the South African economy as well, because then it means everyone can participate in the online education economy, whether be it from a South African perspective or the global perspective. Because now, Ben, for instance, if I make an example, a teacher in the rurals who learns how to teach online is not only limited to teach online in South Africa, but now they can have a global reach. They can teach a kid mathematics or English from Ireland or from Lithuania or from Germany. So it further expands South Africa and South African communities to actually participate in the global economy as well as the South African economy as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, 100%. Athenkosi, I want to ask you a little bit about just your product development and your Idandu. I mean, bearing in mind that there's some protocols that you need to follow because it is still, it's IP and all of that. But if you could just tell us what makes your product stand out from others in the EdTech space. I mean, with AI specifically, we read about it every day. There are a variety of different AI tools, some of which I question, I don't know, the accuracy, and we're always going to have, particularly in the education space, but I'm keen to know from you, to hear from you, like if you were marketing this to, to a funder or somebody, what makes your product stand out?
Thank you so much for that, Ben. Look, what makes EdTech quite special, and this is within the value proposition, is that it empowers teachers so that teachers can empower others.
Right.
So you sort of like are creating a brand of ambassadorship within the training of teachers. That's one thing. So we don't empower teachers so that when we have empowered them, they leave and they continue being empowered alone. The point is to actually create a series of empowered teachers in different communities so that they can go now and be ambassadors of online teaching, right? That's number one. So this one comes from community of inquiry, something that we learn within the online learning space, where you sort of like enable people to learn from each other, but you also enable people to learn from content. And also there's the space where content speaks to content and things like that. But this one is about building a community of specialists or community of people that are within the field and empowering each other to develop for development. That's one. The second one that really makes Idandu is that our priority, the work of the platform will never exist unless there is a human-centered attention from the very beginning on the people that actually get to come to the platform. And there's a particular word that I would use had I not been limited in terms of the scope of my conversation. But essentially, we get enough data to be able to know exactly where the teachers are, where to meet them. So we, like, in terms of how we use the influence of AI, it's not because it's available, it's because we ask it to do that which we want it to achieve. But every teacher will feel very special when they enter our platform and also when they leave. So it's essentially that is also the unique selling value. And I think there's quite a lot, but in terms of the environment that you would need to deal with when you're interacting with Idandu, you'd need to be really serious about empowering teachers and seeing it to the end, because then it means you're dealing with someone who has never probably had of a laptop or interacted with a laptop, and you take them through the journey of getting a skill so they are comfortable enough to teach online.
That's a beautiful segue into my next question, Athenkosi. We hear stories about the teachers in every whether it's primary school or high school. They overworked, they're underpaid, the classrooms are enormous. Children, the class sizes are unmanageable. The list goes on. It's quite a challenge to be a teacher in today's South Africa. One of the other things that I've heard of quite a bit when it comes to the plight of the teacher is that they are quite often hesitant to pick up or unwilling, shall I say, to take on any new roles, anything that's new. So you're nodding your head. It looks like you're in agreement. You've heard something like that. I think because from what I've experienced in my own workspace is that teachers, it doesn't come from a place of that they are not interested. It comes from a place of that they're so overwhelmed, they are so overstretched, they're so time poor, they're faced with so many other social issues with the children and the families and the communities. So it often, I think that builds that leads the resistance to taking anything, to adopting a new idea or a new practice. So on that note, I wanted to ask you a little bit about product adoption. So it's going to require quite a shift in how teachers operate. I mean, not only will the teacher now have to learn, to operate on a laptop as opposed to in a classroom situation. But that's quite a shift, especially for a teacher who's been doing it in a particular way. So I was just curious to get your thoughts about that. I mean, I don't think it's an exhaustive conversation. I think it's really something that it's just so more your insights and your thoughts on that, just about product adoption.
It's a very interesting and very valid, some valid points that you're bringing up, Ben. So essentially, the Minister of Education, I think it was Angie at the time, she makes an announcement about how many gaps in terms of how many vacancies there are there in 2022. This is when I begin my research. It's actually something that I started my research with. Quite a lot of the country was facing vacancies that were not filled up for teachers.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to 2024, teachers are expecting to be retrenched beginning of 2025, right? So you ask yourself, what has happened? This is the reason why I'm highlighting this, is that one of the reasons teachers don't stay in teaching, or young people don't go for teaching anymore, is one, it's not financially attractive. It's one of the things that teachers face, but it's also quite exhaustive as well. And I have one of my favorite students, I'm not sure if she's still here. She's left, but Ndogozo. Ndogozo is currently a teacher. She's been a teacher for about 3 to 4 years now. And she's teaching in Mamelodi, and she went on and signed up for an honors project that's focusing on computer integrated education, because she wants to enhance herself in the technology field so that she can offer more value as well, right? And it's one of the challenges that is there, is that when teachers get into teaching, they've been teaching for quite a lot of years, they get into a point where when they sort of like, you can't leave because your entire legacy is within teaching. And so the adoption of having to have technology in such a space is not only just going to be dependent on the interest of the teachers, but on the age of the teachers, and also their perspective of what technology is. And one of the chapters that I cover in the PhD is the resistance of technology by teachers, right, which speaks to adoption. So I definitely do believe that it's going to be it'll be quite a challenge to actually enable, like to have direct, adoption of the technology within the space of teaching. But there are a lot of things that you can be able, that are in your control, Ben, that can influence that. One, your team, right? Your team needs to be incredibly passionate about the kind of context that you're working in. They need to show enthusiastic leadership when it comes to having to achieve the goals that you want. It's not for people whose heart can become, tired quite easily. That's one. The second part is that, and I think this generally works when I'm interacting with teachers, you need to present the value proposition very well to them. And if you heard me from the very beginning, one of the things that actually make this this project, and that made teachers to actually come and say, I'm signing up for data collection, was that you'd receive a certificate that you can teach online after having to have done the data collection training, right? The other part is that the skills that you have that can be identified from a certificate allow you now to teach online, and teaching online means extra revenue for you. So what I really wanted to impact teachers with is not just skills that they can hang around with and chill at home, but it's skills to empower them to make extra revenue for themselves. Because as I said, now with those skills, they can be able to already have being a teacher for 5 to 15 or 20 years, Ben. You've been a teacher of mathematics, you know your thing. Now you just need a Dandu as a platform to train you on how to now exercise or adopt those skills for online teaching. It's just a change of environment. And that change of environment requires specific skill sets, and we can give you those skills. But the question is, what happens to you when you are now able to teach online is that you have access to a global economy. And that becomes the number one attractive value for teachers, because then they ask themselves, whoa, so I can be even in my school when I'm done with administration or teaching, and just open a laptop and go to a quiet room and teach students all over the world. Interesting. Now, teacher, you can even have a host of sort of like students that are looking for a teacher good at mathematics all over South Africa, and you can host them on Zoom and tutor them. And now you can be able to sort of like build a mini academy for yourself, register an extra business, and be able to earn extra income, because now you are using your skills and extending them beyond just the brick and mortar environment.
I love that, because, you know, so many times, you know, I think teachers also get the rap that, you know, they just do it because you're a teacher, you know, for the good of the people, but they're human beings like everybody else. So we all respond to incentive. You put, and be it financial, be it accolades, whatever it is, I think. So that really makes sense. So what you're saying is that the uptake coupled with the opportunity for incentive has the opportunity to shift into adoption.
Exactly.
So it's not just asking someone to do something for nothing in return. You're offering an opportunity. Exactly. And I think another thing that that possibly might be of also an incentive is possibly more time, because of course if you are teaching online, you know, you cut out a commute to the office or to the school. You know, you can just walk into your second bedroom or wherever you've got your desk, you know. So I mean, these are all, especially after COVID, I mean, I think these are all very real things. People value, there seems to be a value of personal time that's heightened, you know what I mean? Since COVID, like a lot of people are still working from home, a lot of companies are doing sort of hybrid solutions. But yeah, so I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think just another very quick point. So now, most of the teachers that we would have in the profession, Ben, you have to understand that there were teachers who from apartheid really just had that as their only job. It was one, to be a teacher was like something that you can be able to look at and be like, oh yeah, like it's like a profession that most of our old mothers and grandfathers would actually go to. But then now, Ben, we're growing up in a society with a different kind of generation that's in social media, tech skills, and things like that. So who would now be interested in going to teaching? What really makes teaching something that's attractive? So one of the things, Ben, that help with in terms of adoption, especially with the younger generation, is knowing that I'm not just going to be a teacher who's going to stand in front in a brick and mortar school. I can travel the world. I can continue with my other projects, because now there's a technology that helps me to teach online, but all I have to have is the skills and the qualification to teach online.
Beautiful. Oh, that was so beautifully put. So I just, the opportunity factor is what that sounds to me. Amazing.
Exactly.
Thanks, Athenkosi. You've spoken a little bit about intellectual property, and notwithstanding the conditions around Idandu and that you're developing it in collaboration with the University of Pretoria. So I'll speak more broadly about IP. And I just wanted to ask you, in the context of creating EdTech solutions for teachers, be them rural or not, you know, just if you talk about that shift now. How do you strike that balance between open access to educational tools and protecting your IP? So, of course, then, I mean, what I should really be asking as well on top of that is you've got AI thrown on as a third dimension into this mix. So you've kind of got, how do you keep that balance? I mean, because this is going to become, not just in South Africa, but also on the continent, this is going to become bigger and bigger, whether people like it or not. We're going to see more and more digital solutions in the EdTech space, surely.
Yeah. I think it's a very interesting conversation, especially when it comes to IP, is that IP does represent sort of like limitations for us to expand, but also to expand, Ben, it doesn't just happen, but you need funds to do that. You know that you're offering a solution that brings meaning and usefulness to people's lives. And people are going to consume that as a service. They're going to consume that in the form of a product. And whenever something is consumed, it also needs to be recreated again and again and again. And for you to be able to do that, there's a cost to that. Right. So you have to then have sort of like a budget where you give people the value, but in order to give that value, you have to have a cost. And then also, in terms of the time that you put in for it, you also have to have an incentive. So it's a very interesting balance to strike. You are limited at times with the access to funding, and you have the beauty of higher education institutions that sort of like embrace the creation of such innovations, right? And to some extent, they also allow them the freedom to thrive and expand beyond their horizon, and they back them with funding. And I think it will also be dependent on the type of sort of like institution that you're in, because some institutions can be very selfish. Some institutions can actually be like, you know what, we are going to promote this so much to an extent where everyone is going to want to come to the University of Pretoria, right? So that's the benefit for them. But then what they give for that is, you know, millions of funding for this project to actually expand and go all over Africa and go all over the world. So part of the process of the technology transfer, when you are actually sort of like doing this, is that it has to be approved as a novel idea. It has to, you know, you have to go through the processes, but you also have to show them the research that you've done that shows that there's a market for this.
Yeah.
And then ultimately make a decision on whether you want to be involved within that product. And obviously then from my side, there's a certain, you know, expectation they can have in terms of my involvement, but in terms of the ownership and the housing, this entire project is with the University of Pretoria. So there are certain limitations that are there, but if you find yourself within the right relationships and the right institution, there is no bounds to where this vision can impact and can be able to find sort of like access to people who don't necessarily have the funds to access it, because at times with the right institution, they can be like, look, if they press this button, they can access these free resources. It's almost like you look at the project of UCT Online High School. Yes, there's a value that they offer as a school, and there are charges that they have for attending the school. But then also embedded inside of that, there are freely accessible resources that have been created by learning designers, by instructional designers from the school, that any normal student in South Africa can access online, so long as they have access to the internet. So that's something that obviously then every person who builds something like this wants to embed within their product, is that yes, as we grow, we have to manage the costs, but also at the same time, there are freely accessible resources that are there for you to access if you are not able to get access to the payable service.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, it sounds to me like it's a lot about, it's as important to be values aligned with whoever you are partnering with.
Exactly.
So it's about making sure that there's opportunity for growth, but that the values are aligned.
Yes.
I've got, Mantomba, you've got your hand up. Sorry, won't you come in?
Hi, guys. Thank you so much. Interesting conversation. I have two questions. Happy, I will come to you now because you had your hand up for quite a while. I'm just going to start with Ntati's question. She wants to know, how does the project form part of your assessment for your PhD?
Very, very interesting question. So part of what you have to hand in, what I've had to hand in is an entire Figma design that I've had to list within my PhD thesis, meaning that the hand in is like a very, very long thesis. That's number one. And then the second part in terms of assessment is that it has to be a working product. Because of the title of my PhD, it's design and test a solution for this and for this and for this. So they want to see the design. They want to see what design is this. And then the testing. How did you go about testing it? Who did you test it with? And things like that. So that all go part of your thesis. What's also quite nice about a PhD is that obviously you have a research question and you have objectives. So it's easy to assess when you look at the objectives, because they ask a simple question of, did you achieve the objectives? And so if one of the objectives was saying, create this and this and this and that, then they want to see whether you've created that. If the research question was about a particular gap, they want to see at the end of the day, did you bring about the creation of new knowledge? And most of the time, all the time, that's what it is about a PhD, right? It's now, you're not just playing around with other people's knowledge, but you are actually now creating new knowledge. And there's nothing as fascinating as that, in terms of having to have the ability to expand the knowledge barriers within the field of expertise that I'm in. So that's how sort of like it's tested. They have to go, they have to see the design, it works, and also within the margins of, within the boundaries of what you said were objectives for that particular PhD. I'm hoping that that answers your question, Tati.
Tati, are you
Great.
able to give us a thumbs up?
Yes, I've just seen
yeah,
from,
she said,
from
yeah,
the
she says
messages,
it makes sense. Thank you so much. And then Happy says, the question has been answered. Thank you so much. I'm gonna ask a question as well. Seeing that we have teachers who are overstressed, who feel overwhelmed, and now this opportunity gives them another outlet to teach broadly and all over the world. How then are you working with them in how to bring in the balance? Because I heard you saying a teacher can, in between, can go sit somewhere and quickly teach maybe people in Singapore and all that. And then when it comes to then them declaring and using the department's time to teach, yes, how will that be worked out?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question to ask. So part of what I cover within my PhD is exactly part of that from the brick and mortar perspective, right? In terms of how teachers are tired, and the experiences of teachers, and why teachers actually don't go for personal development, right? To develop their skills further and things like that. In terms of the use of the platform and teachers having to teach online, that's why I said the most important thing for this to function is what you do with the people when they come in. So we do what you call sort of like an understanding of the user, the experience of the user previously with technology, but also where the user is currently in terms of their emotional state, in terms of their financial state and things like that. Because then when they come in, the technology will advise based on that which it has now found out about this user, right? So it's quite human-centered in its approach. And there's also like the advancement in terms of the ongoing training that allows teachers to manage their time. So part of online sort of like training or online teaching needs you to, Ben did mention that you sometimes will deal with classes of 40, 50. You still have to do class management when you are teaching online. And so we do then a training on online class management. It's part of what I had to do with the teachers for my PhD training when we were doing data collection. And so as part of that, you include the reason why you have to manage the class is for your mental health, it's for your time, it's for the skill sets that you have, and also to be able to achieve objectives that you've set for your class. And part of that is you can't be able to then, you need to be able to have the capacity to teach, but also the capacity to take care of yourself. So it's an aspect that will be mentioned and an aspect that you will receive the training on, right? In terms of having to ensure that you stay within the obligations of your teaching or what is expected of you in terms of your responsibilities, definitely. So one of the things that, for instance, I was telling teachers during the training was that this is for after your 9 to 5. So when you've gotten at home, you've rested, until it's something where you can say, look, I'm actually having this as my only income now because it supplies for all my needs. But on top of that, you have a teacher who would go brick and mortar and spend in a school 9 to 5, and then the kids feel like they don't have a mother or a father who's at home. But then now you are able to be at home, you are able to travel, you are able to do things, you have freedom for a lot of things, so long as it's able to cover that which you need financially, right? So the advice that we give is that this is something that you are able to actually do after you've done your daily duties. And obviously we can't control the teacher who's going to be in school and then go to a private class and then sort of like do the teaching and making use of those resources and the time that they should be spending in their administration or their teaching. But our hope is that teachers would be sort of like disciplined enough to be able to sort of like respect those responsibilities and be able to carry this as something that will be extra until it's something that they can do fully as a sole job or as a sole responsibility.
Okay, I guess it's the double-edged sword here, you know, like with nurses, we train a lot of nurses here, and then they all leave because the grass is greener on the other side, you know, so that skills, drainage, and I was just wondering how we will be able to contain all that knowledge so it stays
with them
and helps and helps the people who desperately needs it. Because now the world is opening up for the teachers, but it's not opening up for the students as much as it's opening up for the teachers.
So I think it would also touch on the fact that it's quite important to obviously then sort of like make teachers aware of that look, remember why you went into teaching in the first place. And at times the teachers that went in for money, when they start making money from the online teaching, they obviously then leave immediately when they know that, look, I'm fine right now, so I'm just going to be doing this and I'm going to leave this one alone. But you find teachers who went into teaching to empower the kids because they understand the power of teaching itself, right? And so most of them are going to be the ones that are going to learn the skill set to actually place these skills in their classrooms. So they are the ones who learn how to use cell phone technology for learning or in a classroom, and then be able to then implement that with their kids and say, hey kids, the government brought in laptops. I'm going to give you all laptops. You're going to learn how to do laptops. Let me explain to you why that is quite important as a point that you raised, Mantombi. There are a lot of students that come into the university space and they've never touched a laptop in their lives. The more we empower teachers to embrace technology in their classroom, of which Ben now comes in full circle with the theme of this webinar, right? The more our focus is on empowering the teachers to embrace the use of technology in their classroom, we are actually enabling and elevating a generation of young people that will have had access to technology and resources. And then by the time they get to university, an environment that needs them to have those skills already, we would actually help the university quite a lot, and would help those students and families and households and the entire South African economy in terms of ensuring that the graduates that come out don't spend unnecessary time in university by extending degrees because they didn't have the skills to survive or to thrive here. And they can be released on time so they can add value to other people's lives, their families, and to the South African economy. So if you view it, it's connected to so much, but my heart is on teachers embracing that technology in their classroom. And as I mentioned, Ntokozo, who was here, is one who's currently doing that at the moment, because when she learns the technology, she then has to go back to the school to place the skill sets that she's used and embrace them in a class.
Awesome. Thank you. Ben?
Wow. So, I mean, from what I'm also hearing, I mean, apart from the attitude change, the mind shift that's required, I mean, there's mind shift and there's opportunity, and it's, so we've sort of spoken about those two things, but then it's also about explaining the value of adopting something that is completely different with some similar pieces of what you had in the past, but adopting something new that can actually give you, the benefits outweigh the negatives. And it's that kind of approach that I suppose innovators like yourself and others need to focus on. I wanted to ask you, and I think, just in, as an entrepreneur or as an innovator at Athenkosi, what advice would you give to, a younger version of yourself, somebody who's also got this wonderful idea, or somebody who wants to be an agent of change in the, on the African continent, what bit of advice would you give?
Week in, week out, this is what I've been doing since I started Africa Can Foundation. And I still do it now. I sit with young people who are in my mentorship circles, and I empower them with the methodology that I developed just looking throughout my life. And the methodology is called Go Mad. And the intention is to actually publish a book around that methodology. But in terms of a summary, what it's really about, Ben, is Go Mad is M stands for mastering things, or being a master of the field of expertise. And then the other level to it, and you can't go to that level until you know by confirmation that you have mastered this field of expertise. It's then having to excel greatly within the field of expertise that you're in. And then the D is for dominating within the field of expertise that you're in. I challenge the people that are in my circles, in my mentorship circles, around this methodology. And really what it's about is, our grandmothers would have come to university. There was someone who was here 100 years ago without the level and quality of access to technology and advancement in terms of the higher education institutions that we're in. But they would have come here, Ben, and gotten a degree. How is it that I come to university as a young person right now and all I get is just a degree? So my empowerment to these young guys is always, you cannot achieve the same things I achieved when I came to university. It can't be about the paper anymore. There has to be something that you leave behind that shows that you dominated the field of expertise that you're in. There must be something that shows that, yes, this person actually came into this degree, but then what did you leave behind? Did you leave behind just a GPA of 65 or a GPA of 95, but there's nothing to show about it? So for me, as a person who's quite induced into the world of thinking around entrepreneurship, building solutions and things like that, I would empower young people or younger people to always take the view and the perspective of becoming change drivers. Because in order for you to become dominant in the world, you need to become a change driver. I went with this project, Ben, and pitched it overseas. And when I pitched it overseas, when the people saw the presentation, they were like, we've had people present in our institution, but not someone who has presented in such a way that, one, is engaging, presents very well, presents a solution that actually works, and is quite innovative in terms of the presentation. And essentially what I did is I just created a video, Ben, that allowed people to experience what the problem is in their context. So now I remove the South African context and I put it in their context so that they can, when they see the problem, they're like, whoa, wait a minute, this problem does exist here in Lithuania. And then when I draw out solutions, I draw out solutions based on the context as well. And so for me, the empowering is the empowerment is about wherever you are placed in the world. The main question is always for me going to be, are you dominant in the field of your expertise? And in order for you to be doing that, the degree can't give you that. You need to expand yourself beyond your degree. And as a last note, sometimes what it means to expand yourself outside a degree, foolishly for me, meant that in my first year, second year, Ben, I would give my phone to a friend of mine who's a fellow MRF scholar, Christian Polorini. And I'd give him the phone so that he can go around recording the lectures for me. Because when I sat around the lectures, 45 minutes, after 45 minutes, I was like, this can't be real. It can't be that I'm sitting around doing the same thing, listening to the same person each and every day. What am I producing as a matter of fact? And so I gave him this phone and I would look at these lectures at night. What was I doing during the day? And I'm not advising young people to do it. But during the day, I'd go to Khayelitsha, start the foundation, during the day, I'd go to the University of Cape Town Graduate School of Business. They had an MTN solution space at the time at Waterfront. And I'd go out and do jobs. I'd go out and train myself outside of my degree. And ultimately, I did quite well in my degree to a point where now I had more skills to show outside of a normal civil engineering graduate. And that's what I want to empower young people with. It's think bigger, but also go mad. Go mad for the field of expertise that you're in.
Unlock that passion, which I see just coming out of your ears. Mantombi's hand is up. Mantombi's hand is up. Go for it, Mantombi.
Yeah, my question is actually a follow-up on what you just asked him, Ben, that like what would he advise? And I want to link it back to the MRF, because the work that we do is to create or cultivate that entrepreneurial spirit. But what we also find, and I think that's why we do the work we do, is that a lot of entrepreneurs are good technically, but they don't have the internal capacity. Yes, they don't have the internal capacity to be able to be resilient and all those things. So for you, do you think that's the inner work? I don't know if you've heard about the IDGs.
No, Mantomi, but I have a sense that you're about to let me know.
Yes, because as much as we talk about SDGs at the MRF, we are now talking a lot, and it's the work that you've been doing, but now there is a language for it, and there is a whole organization in Stockholm that talks about the internal developmental goals. All the things, mindfulness, wellness, somatic work, and all the things that I think a lot of people don't talk about outside. Everyone talks about competence and, you getting good at what you do. And that's perfectly fine, because we do that as well as the MRF. We pay for the technical skills for people to go to university and study. But as part of our leadership development program, we then capacitate people like you so that when they go out there and there is issues, you are able to know, okay, I'm about to get burned out here. What do I do? Wellness and all those things. How have you been able to incorporate and still continue incorporating that in the work that you do, and also passing it over? Because you said you work with a lot of young people that you are mentoring.
I think you definitely will be aware of how, for instance, first years who in the MRF network come in and then they know about themselves as a leader. And I found out for myself as as Athenkosi, okay, you are this enthusiastic visionary, and then you get like excited. Oh, I'm a 7. I'm a this. I'm a this. I'm a that. But then you get introduced to the fact that there are parts within yourself that you have to work on, because I've always seen the internal work as not something that is a finish line. It's continuous work. There's never anyone that can say, I'm perfect, I've done all the work. But there's always internal work that needs to be done. So I agree with you. It's very, very important for it to be there. It's part of sustainability, actually, for me. And I'm glad that you've let me know. I feel like there should be a webinar that Mandela Rhodes does when it comes to this particular part of that I didn't know about, when it comes to the goals that you had mentioned. So for me, I'd definitely be one who advocates for one to do that internal work. There are aspects in business building, Mandombi, that are going to be needing that work. You can have the right solution. You can have a great idea. You can also have the market. So the market is clear. It wants this thing that you're building, and the idea is great. But then the team that you choose can literally kill and destroy all of that in an instant. And a lot of successful entrepreneurs speak about this. I was reading an article, listening to a thing by Vusite Megwayo, who was speaking about how he had part ways with one of his founders because the founder just didn't get it. He didn't get the context they were working in. He didn't have the experience of the people that they were serving. And so that led to a lot of conflict. Now, Mandomi, if you don't do the work internally, it's going to reflect within how you handle or lead the team. It's going to reflect in terms of how you work and collaborate with the team. You actually are never going to be able to reach your full potential because you're not doing the internal work. So I definitely advocate. And I think for me, part of what has led to a success in a lot of things. I remember when they were giving me the Vice Chancellor Award at UCT, I had 2 of my kids that were coming as beneficiaries from Africa Can Foundation, a foundation that I built, and later on trained them to be involved in the business so they can make money. They were there when I was receiving those awards. I gave those awards to them and I said, whenever I take a picture, you're going to be there, and here's an award for you, here's an award for you. And I held the other 3rd award, and that's a picture that I've always been proud of, because when you do the internal work, you don't hoard this solution as yours and the impact. You also, at the same time, don't abuse the impact that you are able to create. You don't abuse the people that get to work for you. You don't even get to abuse that market. Instead, you get to take care of it. And so it's something that for me is quite important. And I think it lends to the question that Tati is asking about collaborating with the government in the future. And the thing is, when you have not done that internal work, you are also not going to allow yourself for collaboration. So to answer that question, definitely, in terms of collaborations with government, this cannot be a successful project without government being involved. So that's why whenever we're building a business or you're doing a business model, there's always something that you touch on in terms of the partnerships that you're going to have. And some in terms of models for business can be, for instance, what do you call this? It can be business to business. So we call them B2Bs. It can also be business to client. So you have a sole client, it's business to one person, right? That buys your solution instead of a cluster of people that buy your solution. It can also be B2G as well, which is business to government, because governments are very essential to having to expand your impact. But then, Tati, I'm going to challenge you on this question, on something that we learned when we were at Mandela Rhodes, and I'm very well aware of time. We were in one session that almost brought tears to my eyes when they challenged us about how, if we don't collaborate with people who are in authority, we risk having to make so much impact within our space that can be deleted by a single policy that's created, all because I wasn't there to collaborate. And I started to imagine in my head, all the work that I would be doing in the townships and schools, you're telling me just because I don't have the right collaboration or the right mind to collaborate with government who makes policies, who can literally just make one single decision, and all of it is gone. They decide, look, you're doing great work, Athenkosi, in these township schools, but hey, it's COVID, we're closing down the schools. So I always wanted to have a collaboration with such institutions and entities like government who are making big decisions or impactful decisions. There's always challenges that are going to be there. You're going to meet people there are people that approached me, and Tati, and I got their emails after they've just had a bit of just a little bit of what we do. And I could see that these people's hearts are not in the right direction. And you need to be careful of such, right? And you're going to ultimately find an individual that's going to allow you the space to thrive within government. But you need to be careful. Why? Because even now, during the times of GNU, parties want to grab the next big thing. And immediately when they grab the next big thing, they forget about the values that you built this thing under, and then they run it as a campaign to go to parliament and say, by the way, we as a party are doing this in the Western Cape through Idandu. You need to be careful of such because it presents its own challenges, but that's why I was embracing the Mandela Rhodes Foundation values, because as scholars, we have so much to work with, and the work that we do internally allows us to navigate such spaces. And I'm hoping that a lot of other scholars can be able to navigate such. And I think that's my advice actually to social entrepreneurs is when you work with government, you need to be level-headed. You need to have done so much of that internal work such that you don't say to people, no, You are an excluded person in these conversations, but you welcome them and you embrace them, but you embrace them wisely. And I hope that is something that offers guidance. I'm happy to sort of like speak more about it outside of the platform. I'm definitely very accessible, so you can reach out and we can talk more about it.
Thank you, thank you. Oh, there's a new message. Let's see. Oh, wow, thank you. Awesome. I'm gonna hand over to Ben. Oh, he said, will you? I thought you were saying you will wrap up. Okay, thank you so much, Athenkosi. This has been amazing. Like, yeah, I'm wondering if I can just ask one, which requires one word answer, actually. One last question.
You see,
Before-
Mandovi, you are already entrepreneurial. You see, this moves throughout the Mandela Rhodes family.
One word answer. Because I just want to make sure that when people leave and the people that are going to be listening to this podcast later on, you know, when we say internal work, what are we talking about? You know, because there are so many tools that people are comfortable with. For me, like my go-to is I love breath work. You know, that for me, that's the thing that regulates me and always brings me back to center. So I just wanted to find out what's your internal tool that you use to regulate yourself when you are in tight situations?
Oh, wow. I don't think it's a one-word answer, but for me, it's prayer, Mandombi. It's one of the values that my grandmother taught me from when I was young, was to be able to depend on the Lord in terms of prayer. To this very day, especially this year, it's something that I've had to completely depend on throughout my life. I resigned. Imagine, Mandombi, having to resign out of work. You don't have money for rent for the next 6 months. Your family has nothing to get from you. And you decide, I am going to do this. And you do that out of the fact that you embrace prayer and you relate to it. And you do it because you trust the Lord to carry you. And so that's where, for me, fundamentally, the decision was. And so it's something that has definitely carried me throughout.
Awesome. Thank you so, so much. We really appreciate you for making this time. And we appreciate the people who also made this time to join us in this conversation, and also the recording of this conversation so that we can share it with the rest of the continent and the rest of the world. Any parting shots before I wrap us up, Ben or Athenkosi?
From me, I just want to extend my heartfelt thanks to you, Athenkosi, for continuing your work as part of the Mandela Rhodes community. We really do celebrate our alumni, and we take such an active, keen interest in your successes, but not just in an entrepreneurial sense, but also in that spiritual sense, because it is such a deep-rooted part of our program. And so really, from my side, thank you for availing yourself. Thank you for your generosity of spirit, and thank you for sharing your journey with us and giving your time. And then also thank you to our guests. I know we did have more guests, and some of them had to obviously had to drop off. But yeah, I find conversations like these just so inspiring, and I think so much more could be achieved if we keep the conversation open, and we're curious to learn more and to find out more and to ask questions. And I've so valued being in community with you over this, Athenkosi, and I really hope we can do this again soon. So thank you from my side.
Great. No, thank you so much to everyone, and even the ones who were able to attend. Always inspired to sort of like chat about things like this. And for me, I've always believed that if ever I find myself in such a space, I embrace it, and I know that whatever we get to share in that space is going to be impactful one way or the other. So I'm glad that these conversations have been valuable. And yeah, I look forward to having to attend another webinar by MRF.
Awesome. Thank you so, so much. Thank you, everyone. The conversation is going to be available on our platforms. our soon to be launched podcast, but we're also going to, yeah, we're also going to put the conversation on YouTube and share it with
Great.
our wider audience. Good
Great.
night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you, and go well. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Ati. Bye.